The city's pulse beats in a frantic rhythm of self-optimization, a relentless chase I've watched for 2 decades. I've seen the dawn joggers pounding the pavement in Central Park, their breath plumbing in the crisp morning air. I've counseled app-obsessed professionals in Chicago tallying their macros over cold brews, and witnessed the sun-kissed youth of California chasing influencer-defined abs under an unforgiving sky. Protein powders, once the gritty sacrament of bodybuilders, have morphed into a mainstream elixir. Swirled into smoothies by Wall Street traders, postpartum mothers in Boston brownstones, and ambitious teenagers in the sprawling suburbs of Texas. But in October of 2025, a Consumer Reports expose landed like a haymaker, shattering my carefully constructed, professionally guarded faith in these supposed vessels of wellness. It wasn't just a collection of data, it was a siren call laced with a familiar dread, forcing me to confront shadows from my own past. Today, I'm not just presenting a case study, I'm sharing David's story. This isn't about dry facts, it's about the visceral ache of betrayal, the corrosive sting of the what-ifs, and the fragile, hard-won hope of reclamation. This is real, pulled from the cold reality of laboratories and the warm blood of human lives. A cautionary heartbeat for anyone who starts their day with a ritualistic scoop of powder. It began on a sweltering June morning, the kind where the New York City air hangs thick and heavy, clinging to you like a past regret. David, a towering 25-year-old sculpted by endless hours of disciplined reps, strode into my office. His backpack was slung low with practiced nonchalance, but he clutched a neon green shaker bottle like a sacred talisman. He was an IT prodigy who had traded the predictable sunshine of Silicon Valley for the chaotic energy of the city, a perfect embodiment of the relentless modern drive, launching startups by day, conquering iron by night. His eyes, however, told a different story. They were hollow, shadowed, as if the life force had been slowly scooped out from within. "Doc," he rasped, his voice rough with exhaustion as he collapsed into the patient chair with a thud that seemed to echo his profound weariness. "I'm breaking apart." 5 days a week at that insane gym near Times Square, meals timed like stock trades, protein shakes for fuel, and I feel like a ghost. My head throbs with these hellacious migraines. My moods are swinging wilder than the NASDAQ. And my focus, it's gone. I just stare at lines of code, and they blur into nothing. What if this is it? What if my edge is just slipping away? His voice cracked on the final word, revealing the raw terror of a young man watching his potential unravel just as he was supposed to be hitting his peak. I leaned forward, a familiar twist in my gut. I've seen this kind of fracture before. The quiet, desperate despair of a body betrayed by the very tonics that promised its strength. David was the poster child for the optimized life. His mornings began with oatmeal, fortified with a scoop of trendy vegan whey he'd found on Amazon. Lunch was a meticulously prepared salad, spiked with another serving from a tub he'd picked up at Whole Foods. His post-workout shake was gulped down with the fervent belief of absolution. It's all plant-based, man. The good stuff. No weird lactose chains, just pure, clean gains, he explained, a flicker of his old pride cutting through the fog of his fatigue. The regimen had worked, physically. He'd packed on 10 pounds of lean muscle in under a year, crafting a physique that commanded attention on the crowded subway. But that same body was now in open rebellion. His limbs felt heavy as lead. The irony was not lost on me. His sleep was a fractured landscape of phantom aches, and a gnawing void had replaced the roaring fire of his ambition. I ordered the standard battery of tests, hormone panels, vitamin deficiencies, iron levels, and then, with a knot tightening in my stomach, I added a heavy metal screening. It was a long shot, a hunch born from whispers I'd heard about leaks from the Clean Label Project, terrifying tales of invisible poisons lurking behind clean and natural labels. When David's results came back, they didn't just confirm my fears, they clawed at my soul, a horrifying echo of the grief I'd buried years ago after my own sister's unexplained fatigue went undiagnosed for far too long. His blood work was a silent scream, 3 micrograms of lead per deciliter. It wasn't high enough to trigger emergency room sirens, but it was a slow, insidious poison seeping into his very core. A clear explanation for the cognitive fog, the volatile moods, the crushing fatigue. Lead isn't a villain from black and white industrial films. It's a modern thief in the night, a silent saboteur that burrows into bone and brain tissue, accumulating like a miser hoarding its toxic treasure until it decides to strike. The World Health Organization is unequivocal. There is no safe threshold for lead exposure. Every microgram accumulates, etching irreversible scars on the delicate tapestry of the nervous system. For David, a young man in his prime, this meant more than just headaches. It was a creeping assault on his entire being, fraying his nerves like the worn-out cables of the subway, sparking an irritability that was putting immense strain on his new relationship. "How is this possible?" he choked out, his face draining of all color as he gripped the armrests of the chair, his knuckles turning white. My mind flashed with images of other patients, other lives derailed by this stealthy foe, their dreams dissolving in the sterile air of dialysis clinics or the quiet despair of therapy sessions. "We're going to figure this out," I promised, my voice a steady anchor for him, even as my own pulse raced. I turned my monitor towards him and pulled up the bombshell report from Consumer Reports dated October 16, 2025, its stark, damning revelations unfolding before us like a tragic family photo album. This investigation wasn't a sterile laboratory exercise. It was a collective gut punch to the wellness industry. The report detailed the testing of 23 of the top-selling protein powders, sourced from the same places consumers like David bought them: Amazon, Walmart, GNC. The findings were horrifying. 70% of them were laced with lead, exceeding the 0.5 microgram per serving limit, a safety guardrail established by California's Proposition 65, which itself includes a 1,000-fold safety factor. The levels of exceedance were staggering, reaching 10-fold, even 15-fold. David's preferred brand, Naked Vegan Mass Gainer, clocked in at an astonishing 7.7 micrograms per serving, a 1,572% violation. A single daily shake was delivering a dose that nearly maxed out the FDA's already generous 8.8 microgram daily cap for adults, turning his quest for gains into a process of gradual self-poisoning. Huel Black Edition, a favorite among tech bros chasing peak optimization, was found to contain 6.3 micrograms of lead, plus the added insult of cadmium, a notorious kidney killer. It was a double betrayal. On average, the celebrated plant-based powders contained 2.5 micrograms of lead, 9 times the 0.28 micrograms found in their dairy whey counterparts. The contamination was being siphoned from tainted soils, where peas, soy, and rice absorbed the ghostly remnants of industrial pollution like parched wanderers in a desert. And the flavor trap was real. Chocolate varieties consistently showed 4 times the lead and a shocking 110 times the cadmium of vanilla options. The statistics painted a grim picture of an industry spiraling out of control. Since 2010, the percentage of dirty supplements had ballooned from 25% to over 70%, a direct consequence of a $20 billion market's unchecked expansion and an FDA oversight process as lax as a forgotten lock on a public door. Over cups of black, unadulterated office coffee, I laid out the nightmarish reality for him. My words were heavy, weighted with the empathy of a healer who has held too many hands through the agonizing "why me" moments. Lead doesn't just appear, it invades through the scars of the earth. The faded sins of defunct factories in the Rust Belt, the toxic runoff from rivers carving through Ohio's farmlands. These poisons settle in the soil. Plants, especially those grown organically in soils that aren't treated with certain binding agents, can guzzle these heavy metals greedily. The Clean Label Project's 2024-2025 analysis of 170 products confirmed this paradox. 47% of the organic products they tested were marred by high levels of metals. Dairy whey generally fares better, as a cow's biology acts as a natural filter, but even that source isn't entirely immune. For David, his daily shakes meant his blood lead levels were likely spiking by 1 to 5 micrograms each year, according to models from a 2020 environmental research study. It was a creeping tide, slowly eroding his cognition, like a complex line of code unraveling in slow motion. But the deeper wounds were even more terrifying. The potential for permanent neurological damage, the documented risk of IQ drops of 4 to 7 points in exposed children, dreams deferred before they could even bloom. Then's the cardiovascular crush, the tightening vice of hypertension on young hearts, the specter of strokes lurking like uninvited guests at future weddings. Kidneys scarred, immune shields cracked, and reproductive systems ravaged. A higher risk of miscarriages for hopeful mothers, dwindling fertility for fathers-to-be. It was the anguish of Flint's families playing out on a different stage, where lead's legacy lingers in a child's hesitant first words or a teenager's foggy concentration. And the cruelest twist? Lead hides in your bones, a sleeper agent that can be mobilized during pregnancy or menopause, flooding the bloodstream anew and chaining generations together in a cycle of quiet despair. I saw the dawning horror in David's eyes, terror for the family he hoped to have one day, for the shark coder's mind he felt slipping away, for the muscles he'd built in vain if his spirit was left to crumble. "This isn't just data, David," I said softly, my own throat tight. "It's lives. It's your life, your future kids' lives, being stolen one sip at a time." He recoiled as if struck, tears welling in his eyes, the invincible facade he had so carefully constructed cracking like sun-baked Brooklyn pavement. But the reviews, they were glowing. Reddit was full of people calling it a superfood, a salvation. Desperation and the raw sting of gullibility laced his plea. "We often value emotion over evidence," I countered gently, "but laboratories don't lie. These were anonymous buys from coast to coast, subjected to high-performance liquid chromatography in certified California labs. All the tested products hit their protein marks, delivering their promised 20 to 60 grams, but at what a devastating cost. The high alert list was clear: Naked's toxic abyss, Huel's hazardous blend. Some were a weekly gamble, like Garden of Life's 2.82 micrograms, a flirtation with fate. But there were daily graces, safe harbors, Optimum Nutrition's gold standard whey with a mere 0.28 micrograms, allowing up to 1.75 scoops without worry. BSN Synthesix at 0.23, good for 2 guilt-free shakes. And MuscleTech's Nitrotech, which registered at 0, a boundless option for his mass-building quests. You need to swap to whey immediately. "That tub of Naked is a red flag waving on Fifth Avenue," I urged, beginning to map out a safe path forward for him. But addressing lead exposure required more than just a product swap. For him, the existing levels meant a 50% increased risk of health complications, according to PMC models, with his fatigue likely masking the creeping onset of hypertension or the drag of anemia. For families, the stories are heart-wrenching. A mother in a vigil over her toddler's delayed speech. The self-blame twisting in her gut like Flint's tainted tap water. A father's silent rage as his son's athletic promise dims. The poison leached from his own bones potentially passed on, stealing the sparkle from his child's eyes. It's a game of reproductive roulette. Lowered sperm counts, disrupted ovulations, echoing in the anonymous confessions on forums of couples whose dreams of a nursery have been shattered into dust. It's immune system betrayal, where common colds linger for weeks and the whisper of cancer grows louder.
And it's the horror of remobilization, where the physiological stress of pregnancy pulls the toxin from a mother's skeletal stores, dosing the unborn child with the sins of yesterday, a grandmother's long-forgotten exposure rippling down to her grandchild's gait. David's hand trembled on his shaker bottle. In that moment, I saw his future flash before his eyes. Wedding vows blurred by vision problems from high blood pressure. Playground chases with his future kids cut short by the invisible chains of fatigue. "This ends today," he vowed, his voice breaking but laced with a newfound resolve born of sheer terror. I laid out his recovery blueprint. First, a drastic reduction in supplements. The USDA recommends 46 to 56 grams of protein daily for most adults, easily achievable from whole foods. I painted a new picture of fuel for him. Pasture-raised eggs for 6 grams of bliss, the creamy embrace of Greek yogurt for 10 grams, the savory satisfaction of 25 grams from grilled chicken. He would use MyFitnessPal as his compass, a tool applicable from the hiking trails of Alaska to the beaches of Hawaii. If he still felt the need for a supplement, it had to be certified. Look for the NSF or USP stamps. He was to embrace whey, Optimum's 24-gram gold standard, a $1 per serving bliss with 4.8 stars on Forbes. Its chocolate flavor a hit of diner nostalgia. Dymatize's 25-gram ISO 100, a zero-carb sprint perfect for post-run recovery. Transparent Labs 28-gram powerhouse, sourced from grass-fed Vermont cows and free of additives. For on-the-go shakes, Owen's plant-based drink was a safe ally, with only 0.44 micrograms of lead. He was to rotate brands like he rotated his Spotify playlists and get a LabCorp blood test annually if he continued heavy use. For vegans, the path was trickier, favoring soy rice blends over pea-based proteins and creating powerful duets of tofu and quinoa sourced from local Queens markets. And he was to become a label detective, shun products with the Prop 65 scarlet letter, and ensure added sugars were under 10 grams, lest his health shake rival a Dunkin' Donut. 3 months passed, blurring together like healing scars. David returned to my office, and the transformation was stunning. He was radiant, his latest analysis pristine, and he wore a grin as wide as the roar of the crowd at the Boston Marathon. The lead was banished from his system, and his natural vigor had returned, surging like the electric pulse of Gotham. His new ritual was BSN Syntha 6 Whey, 22 grams of velvety clump-free chocolate, blended with berries from the farmer's market and weekend steaks grilled to perfection. "You pulled me back from the brink, Doc," he confessed, his eyes shining with unshed gratitude. "I thought protein was my armor against the city grind, my liberation. Turns out it was just another set of chains, like my student debt." I clasped his shoulder, a genuine warmth blooming in my chest. "Knowledge is what liberates you, David. These things are tools, not tyrants." His story is not an isolated incident. It's a verse in America's growing anthem of ache. The social media platform X erupts with similar discoveries daily. "Just found out my Huel has lead? My vegan nightmare in Seattle is real." Or, "Switch to whey and feel human again." A game changer from Miami to the mountains. NPR has sounded the alarm. The New York Times has chronicled the toll, and Fortune has written a dirge for the heavy metal boom. The Clean Label Project continues to expose the paradox of organics and the hidden thorns in the soils of Midwest farms.
My own clinic is filled with the ghosts of fit fatigue, and I estimate half of them can trace their issues back to a contaminated supplement from a Black Friday sale. In response, some brands like Orgain and Vega have vowed to increase their lab vigils, but full transparency across the industry lags, a desperate plea left unanswered. To dive deeper is to understand lead's insidious legacy. Its elemental symbol, PB82, tells a story of phantom poisons from the peeling paint of Boston row houses and the ghostly emissions of traffic along Route 66, now settled as squatters in the fertile fields of Iowa. A 2020 PMC study revealed that a mere 1 microgram daily intake of lead could spike an athlete's risk of cardiovascular events by 50%, marring marathons in the Chicago chill.
The 2025 clean label data showed 75% of contaminated plant proteins arrived via the bustling ports of Los Angeles. Whey continues its triumph. The grazing lands of Wisconsin act as a natural filter, and advanced hydrolysis like Dymatize offers zero-fat, zero-contaminant options for the keto-conscious on the California coast. I think of another soul, Sarah, a 35-year-old vegan coder at Google's San Francisco campus. She was devoted to Vega Sport, unknowingly dosing herself with its 0.925 microgram Siren's Call as she jogged across the Golden Gate Bridge. Her hair was shedding like autumn leaves in Golden Gate Park, and sleep had become an elusive prize in her high-stress Silicon Valley life. A cadmium coup de grace was scarring her bones. Her shift was strategic, to Equip's 0.72 microgram beef protein isolate with proud Nebraska roots, and limiting Orgain's plant-based protein at 0.715 micrograms. Within 6 months, her tresses returned, her nights mended, proof that recovery is possible with persistence. Myths about this fester like a traffic jam on I-95. The myth of organic purity is shattered by CLP's data showing triple the lead in some Oregon-sourced greens, the toxins as tenacious as humidity in a Louisiana swamp.
The myth that trace amounts are harmless is flatly rebutted by the WHO, as hypertension haunts Dallas executives and fertility flees from Seattle couples. The myth that all brands are equal is debunked by the shining example of Optimum's NSF-certified Michigan facility versus the shadowy, unregulated powders sold on eBay. Real alternatives are the true path to healing. The 25-gram zero-taint triumph of Texas barbecue chicken. A homemade brew of phage yogurt, banana, and almonds delivering 30 grams of protein, perfect for a picnic in the DC greens. A Queen-sourced chana masala with quinoa, a full-spectrum fiber-fortified vegan powerhouse. The omega-rich embrace of Colorado eggs after a grueling squash match. The USDA's guideline for active individuals is 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, a goal best met from the plate, not from a perilous tub of something like serious mass, which was found to contain 8.5 micrograms of arsenic, more than double the weekly safety cap in a single serving. What is the horizon? The FDA must be roused from its slumber in Washington, D.C. Consumer Reports call for a mandatory 0.5 microgram limit, echoing standards already in place in the EU, must be heeded. Brands like Transparent Labs, with their pristine Idaho grass-fed sourcing and public lab reports, are the gleaming model for the future. We need to use tracking apps, get tested at Quest Diagnostics locations nationwide, and vote with our wallets for certified products. My NYC hub has started a protein purge program, offering deep dive blood work and bespoke nutritional blueprints. It has become a necessity in an age where app-hyped immortality is a dangerous illusion. As for David, he now volunteers at a gym on Long Island, a podcast prophet warning other young startup sparks about the hidden dangers. I went from prey to protector, he beamed at his last checkup, pumping his fists. It's like my own Marvel redemption arc.
And me? I continue to endure the city's frantic tempo, but my mission is amplified. I'm working to enlighten everyone from the boroughs of the Bronx to the breweries of Brooklyn, from the transient crowds in Times Square to the quiet conversations in neighborhood taverns. True health isn't found in a plastic jar from Duane Reade. It's forged in vigilance, in knowledge, in the resilient core of our own choices. So pause before you lift that shaker. Let your next sip be one of triumph, as fresh and clean as the Atlantic air. Thrive, my friends. Purity is what powers true might. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Your support helps spread awareness.